Hello everyone and welcome back to a series I am calling Guitar Tone Tested. This is where we test various things relating to guitar tone. Usually they're going to be simpler than not, but we'll see where it goes. Today we're going to be talking about where your phaser should go in your pedal order, at least when it comes to drive. Does it sound better before or after? Now this will mostly come down to opinion and what you want with your tone, and it can also change depending on what gear you have compared to mine. Additionally, phase and other modulations like chorus and flanger, they can be very dynamic. They can do a lot of different things typically. So like the phaser, today I'm just going to let you know that we're going to be using the Phase 90 because it has a single knob. It is the most classic phaser. It's basically, I think it was the first phaser that was made in a compact pedal style enclosure that we know as what guitar pedals are now. But if you were to use something like the Boss Phase Shifter or something like that, that one I think is a digital phaser pedal, which has multiple phaser models in it, and it has 3 different control knobs for controlling how the sound and tone of the phaser works. So you can have some pretty different results, but we're going to try and demonstrate this with some popular items either way, just to give you at least a general idea of what you can start with. But don't be afraid to try things at home, except for if it's stupid. So we already know that we're using the Phase 90 as our phaser. So we are going to be using the same lineup as the last video for our drives. So we talked about wah last time. We used the Ibanez Tube Screamer TS9 as our overdrive because it is basically the classic overdrive. It's the one that is the most recognizable. Not everyone loves it, but it is iconic. The next stage is Distortion, which we're using the Boss Metal Zone. Again, the Metal Zone is not a favorite pedal of people, however it is a very versatile distortion and can get you very good metal distortion tones if you leave all the EQs at noon. And finally, in the final stage of Distortion, we have Fuzz, which we'll be using the Dunlop/Arbiter Fuzz Face Silicon version. I believe this is the FFZ2 or something like that, I don't know. But it is the basic Silicon Fuzz, not the Jimi Hendrix or anything like that. But yeah, this is what we're going to be using for our fuzz because it's mainly the only fuzz that I have. And of course there is the old saying that you should always use your fuzz, at least a fuzz face, in the very front of your guitar pedal order, but that is not entirely true as we have seen in the last video. So we will still be using this and it will still most likely function properly, especially at the Phase 90, I believe is a true bypass pedal and not buffered. Some stuff we have to get out of the way. If you don't care, there should be timestamps in the description and there should be chapters in the timeline, but we're going to talk about the pieces of kit that I'm using that besides the pedals. So we are going to be using a Squier Stratocaster. It's a bullet model, nothing special. We will be running the pedals into the front of the amplifier, and the amplifier is the Boss Katana Mark II 2x12 combo cabinet. We'll be running it on the clean channel, on the panel channel, with everything set to noon except for volume and other stuff that needs to be set there. Otherwise, gain is where gain, EQ, all that's set to noon. And to record it all, we are going to be using a Audio-Technica AT2020, which is a relatively flat response, supposedly. And it is put in the center of the room, kinda in the center, relatively center of my amplifier to try and capture the full sound of those 2 speakers. One thing to keep in mind is that I do have a camera right here, just out of frame, might be just barely in frame, but it is almost in front of the microphone. However, I listened to it through headphones and I believe that it should still be an accurate representation of what I should be hearing in the room. It's always a little different though. So now let's finally get into some tones. So we are going to be starting with the overdrives, going from smoothest to harshest sounds, and we will be starting with the overdrive in front of the phase. Oh my god, I got a pretzel loop in my frickin' cord. Okay, let me tune up the guitar, and then we will do some clean tones first. We are currently in drop D tuning. I may shift it back to E standard, but who knows. Okay, all the recordings are going. Now, let's get a clean tone. Or not. Oh, it's because I don't have a power supply in the freaking pedals. God, I did not prepare. I thought I had everything set up, and I was wrong. Where did it go? I do not have things well organized right now, and I don't know if it's ever going to be. I just always feel like I don't have time. And there's also something else that's happening that may change how I organize things, but I don't know for sure if it's gonna happen, but I'm kind of waiting for it to happen, so. Oh, jeez. Okay, the power supply is plugged. Whoa, scared the crap out of me a little. Let's turn that on standby so I don't get spooked again. Wasn't even that loud, it just kind of spooked me. Now we should be able to have a clean tone. Now, a fun fact is that you normally, if you have all true bypass, you would be able to play still if all your pedals are off, even if they don't have a power supply. However, the Ibanez Tube Screamer, since it is aged and it uses, I think it's considered digital, it's, you know, circuitry switching. Where did my pick go? Oh my god, it's over there. But since it uses circuitry switching, it needs power to turn on and off, and it's buffered because of that circuitry switching, much like how Boss is. Okay, no more delays, hopefully. This is just not my day. Just uploaded a 3D printing video and people are insane on it right now. There's so many comments and half of them are good, half of them are absolutely just dumping on me, so a little bit stressed out from that slightly. Okay, clean tone. Okay, there's the fully clean tone. Let's do a clean tone with the phaser, and then we also have to decide where we actually want the phase knob to be. I think this, about the 9 o'clock position, is where I normally used it when I had on my pedal board. So let's see. Because I like the relatively slower sweep, but let's try noon and see how that sounds. It's a little too fast. Okay, how about like 10:30? How about 10:30? Let's see out of that. I think that's a good in between. Maybe I could turn it down just a smidge, but I'll just leave it the way it is. So this displays the actual phaser tone a little more, and the sweep may not be the most musical thing, but it will still be good for tonal experimentation. So let's turn on the Ibanez Tube Screamer without the phase and get a clean tone on that, or bass tone, and then also set its levels properly. The drive is at about 1:30 on the clock, the tone is at noon, and the level is where it needs to be to get proper levels for my recording. So here we go. Alright, so there is the bass tone that we have with our Ibanez Tube Screamer. Let's turn on the phase. Alright, so the classic saying that we're going to have throughout this series, I always have to say it, you are going to get the most tone and characteristics of the pedal that is last and turned on in your pedal order. So if you have an EQ pedal after your distortion, it's going to sound different than if you have it before, because you are EQing the, because if you have it before, you're only EQing the signal before it gets distorted, and then if you put the EQ after, you are EQing the distortion after the distortion happens, so you are EQing the distortion. Same goes for this phaser. You will get more phase sound having it behind your drive, and then before it you will get a little more subdued because the EQ of your pedal is going to take over more of that modulation sound. Hopefully I explained that well. Like I said, I'm not having a great day today. So let's switch the order of the pedals and see what there is to see. Okay, so now we have the phase coming before the drive. And another thing is that the MXR Phase 90 knob is easily knockable. So it got knocked out of place, so it might be slightly different than it was before, unfortunately. I think that might be more of a feature than a bug, because I know that the Phase 90 comes with the extra knob topper that allows you to turn the knob with your foot as you play. So I think the easy rotation is meant to be there. It's meant to be easily turned. Although it does make it more difficult for me right in this moment. But oh well. So let's just turn both of them on and see what there is to see. Okay, so in this instance, I think I prefer the phase coming before the distortion. Now this is because drive, I'm gonna say a lot of the wrong terms in the wrong places, just bear with me please. You know what's happening. So the overdrive is clipping and distorting and causing some interesting harmonics with the tone and shift of the phase, which is very cool. It sounded really interesting to me. It was, yeah, I just really like that. I think normally my personal experience with phase, like I said, I had this exact one on my pedal board and I was using it with distortion most of the time. So that's what we will be moving on to, and I believe that I normally used the phase after my distortion, so it would modulate after the distortion, but we'll see how it sounds real quick here actually. Okay, the Boss Metal Zone is in place. Like I said, all the tones are turned to noon to keep it simple and to keep it from getting too whacked out and weird, because I know that the powerful EQs can do that. But let's hear the bass tone for our Metal Zone. Awesome. Very cool. So let's hear it with phaser coming before the distortion. Okay, not nearly as interesting as the overdrive in my opinion. Really, with this distortion at least, distortion is a very wide category and there are many different types of distortion, so your mileage may vary, But with the metal zone, it seems that it just kind of subdues the tone of the phaser, and you just kind of that weird, I don't know if rain stick is the right word, but it's that tube that has another tube inside of it, and it makes that yow sound. I don't know if that makes sense. But it sounds like that frickin' tube thing. Hopefully I'll be able to find a clip of it to better demonstrate. But it sounds like that's going off in the background, basically, kind of with your tone. So, that being said, let's see if it gets more interesting when the phase comes after the distortion. Okay. Alright, phase coming after distortion. Let's see how it sounds. Nope, I have to turn on the amp first. Alright, so that was much more interesting of a tone, if you ask me. So a lot more of the phaser was allowed to come through because it was the last in the pedal order. And when it was last this time, it seemed to have a lot more interesting harmonics kind of happening with the distortion. Maybe not so much, it might have just been kind of the modulation sweep kind of making it more interesting, but either way, this one I think I was doing it right before, and I personally prefer phase after distortion. I like phase before overdrive, but after distortion, so that's a hard one to figure out if you're gonna put it on a pedal board. It's only if you're gonna be using both of them, but if you're only using one, it's a lot easier, but if you're using both of them, that's gonna be a tricky one, huh? So now we have done completely with our distortion, so let's move on to fuzz. Okay, that blue LED is really shiny, but that seems to be a thing for a lot of blue LEDs. They seem to be a lot more brighter than other LEDs for some reason. Anyway, we have the volume tilted back a little bit, the fuzz all the way up. Let's see how it sounds. Hopefully I will not need to tweak it, but we'll see. Let's get a bass tone for the fuzz. Alright, I turned the volume down a little bit more actually on the fuzz face. Very cool. Fuzz face has a great sound. That's why it's lasted so long. Especially the silicone one, because the silicone one sounds a little more distortion-y and a little less just fuzzy. Though I noticed in the last recording that in the room it sounded a lot more clean than it did in the recording. The recording actually sounded fuzzier and it had more of those fuzz characteristics in the recording. But you probably don't care. You just want to hear what this sounds like. Phase after fuzz. very interesting. The phase works very well with how the kind of sawtooth waveform that at least the fuzz phase kind of creates. It all sounds very cool. So let's flip around the pedals and see what it sounds like. Shut up! My fingers are starting to get caught in this tangled mess that is the chords of everything, because there's so many. And they are angled, and some of them are stiffer than others, and then I get ensnared. Alright, turn the amp on, turn the pedals on, and let's see what there is to hear. That is weird. So it was being subdued, the phase tone was being subdued again by the fuzz phase, so it seems like higher gain seems to be not very good for displaying the qualities of phase. However, once again, it didn't have that same type of sound, but it just kind of sounded like it had a weird, like, shifting pulse. It sounded like it literally had a heartbeat or something, which is really metal, you know?
Metal up your ass!
Just as a little addition here, I want to see what happens messing with the phase control with the fuzz, because I don't think many people have done this, as far as I know. I don't think this is a very common pairing, so I want to kind of mess with it for a little bit here, if that's okay with you. If not, just skip ahead. Okay, the fuzz does not like the lower setting on the MXR Phase 90 because it just simply does not come through, at least as far as I could tell. There's usually a little more definition on the microphone, so you might have been able to hear some stuff, but in the room here, basically nothing on that setting. It almost makes it more of a tremolo with the fuzz, because when the phase is behind the fuzz. It's very interesting. But yeah, what did you think? Tell me what your favorite position is, at least based on this recording, or based on your own experience. Tell me in the comments where you like to put your phase, and in front or behind of what drive. So let's review. For Overdrive, I like it in front of Overdrive, but for Distortion and Fuzz, I like it after, because they seem to work better together that way. Now, if I were to put all of these on a pedal board, I don't know how I would order that, because usually I like my Overdrive to come before my Distortion, and I don't usually pair Overdrive with Fuzz, so I usually just use Fuzz. So that's all that would be a very interesting puzzle to figure out. If you liked the sound of these pedals together or on their own, I will have affiliate links to be able to buy these from Amazon. Unfortunately, they are the only company that has allowed me to have affiliate links, but I would appreciate if you would use them and buy something from them, or if you just click on it and then go and buy something else, I still get a little bit of that as well. And yeah, tell me what you want to see next if you want to see some other experimentation. I'm not really sure what else is going to be interesting, especially with what I actually have at the moment, but I will see about what I can do. This channel is normally a music and 3D printing channel, so I normally do guitar and drum stuff, occasionally bass, and then I also do a lot of 3D printing stuff, trying to incorporate 3D printing into music, and then also figuring out everyday problems and solving them with 3D printing. So if all of that sounds good, please consider subscribing. We also do a bunch of other stuff, but more occasionally. That's all I have to say for now, so I'm gonna say bye-bye.